One of the questions I get asked a lot is, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be? And my response has usually been, oh, I want to see what Nero was really like, or I want to learn from Pedro II, or I'll invite Aristotle and give up my seat for Cicero just so they can tiff over who's more self-righteous. But I have a new answer now. The year is 1871. Grand ambitions clashed with old alliances. A new German empire had been forged with blood and steel. A new era was coming, and no one could tell if they were living in the dawn or the twilight. And then there was Bavarian King Ludwig II, who didn't care about any of that because he was busy blowing all his money on interior decorating and musical theater. Hi, I'm going to be in Italy with a bunch of you, looking at Italian things, and I need to learn some Italian in 3 weeks. Which is why I'm especially thankful for today's sponsor, Babbel. Babbel is the world's #1 language learning app, and they're helping me learn Italian. Posso avere il conto? 2 great things about Babbel. 1. With Babbel, 3 weeks is all I need to start speaking. Babbel was created by experienced language educators to prepare you for practical conversations about travel, business, relationships, and more. 2. Babbel is language learning adapted for real life. I'm having lunch, I'm on the train. Guess what? I reach for my phone, 10 minutes later, I've got a few new words in my vocabulary. As a lifelong learner, what more can I ask for? What languages would you like to learn? You can get 60% off your subscription using the link below. Thanks again, Babbel, for supporting lifelong learning and making this show possible. King Ludwig's family was not a very warm one. Ludwig's parents kept him busy for 85 hours a week until he actually began to hallucinate from exhaustion. The doctors assured them this was totally normal. But fantasy turned out to be the key to his happiness. As a child, Ludwig spent Sunday afternoons dressed up in costume, running through the castle halls, all decorated with stories of old, worlds of honor and courage, of myth and meaning and purpose. As a teenager, he watched those worlds come to life in the operas of teenage heartthrob Richard Wagner. Ludwig, it turned out, would soon have the opportunity to live in that kind of a world. The year was 1864, and his father, the king, was worried sick over the delicate political maneuvers that led to German unification, and he worried himself right into the hospital. How is he? Is he alive? Yes, he is alive in heaven. Why would you lead with yes? Ludwig was only 18 when he took the throne, and his first matter of business as king was to track down musical superstar Richard Wagner. This turned out to be a difficult task because Wagner was on the run from debt collectors in half of Europe and a wanted criminal in Germany. He had already achieved world renown, but he remained a starving artist. His most recent opera he'd had to publish as a poem because no one was willing to front such an ambitious production. He was quite hard-pressed to believe then that the loan shark at his door was actually a messenger from King Ludwig, but with a flash of Ludwig's ring, the king's messenger proudly announced that Wagner's grand opera would finally be produced in Bavaria. Wagner was put up in a chalet just a quarter hour from the king's summer manor, and every morning he would meet the king to share his latest work, while Ludwig sat entranced. It was a dream come true for both of them. Ludwig got to meet his idol with a snap of his fingers, and Wagner was finally lifted out of his debts by someone who truly understood his vision and gave him everything he'd ever need to create his magnum opus. Ludwig, bless his heart, swore to the composer that he would not rest until together they had created the eternal, the everlasting work of art. The excitement was mutual. Frankly, the two men were in love. They weren't in bed together. Ludwig was one of the gayest men in history, but he preferred men not old enough to be his father. Even so, Ludwig's admiration had grown to literal worship. My mission is to live for him, to suffer for him, to love him. Love him with all the strength that God has put into the human soul.
You know, I came tonight because I think you're pretty great too.
You should know, I don't have many years to live when my star no longer shines. when the divine Wagner has gone, I think I'll throw myself into the lake. Now, you might have noticed, Ludwig wasn't exactly doing a lot of his actual job while all of this was going on. Wagner was looking for a way to respectfully join the king's artistic passions with his kingly duties into one unified fantasy, but he never quite succeeded. Wagner's lavish spending, fastidious demands, and political influence on the king got him embroiled in politics. Ludwig's ministers wanted Wagner gone, and Ludwig, faced with the most difficult decision of his life, did what he thought was right for the kingdom and told Wagner to leave. Ludwig immediately regrets his decision. He threatens to abdicate on the spot, move to Switzerland, and live out his Hallmark movie dreams with Wagner. He sends Wagner a long letter signed something to the effect of, "Unto death, until we cross into the next world, eternally, eternally, your truest friend, Ludwig." And Wagner has to be the one to talk him out of it. The two saw each other a few more times in their lives, but Ludwig would never know that same quenchless love for the rest of his life. He became obsessed with trying to recapture the spark of those summer days with Wagner. A couple years after Wagner left Bavaria, that girl that likes Ludwig spends the whole night with him at a ball, talking about how much she also loves Wagner and they have so much in common. And Ludwig immediately proposes to her. This was the worst idea he ever had.
I'm starting to think this relationship is more about Wagner than it is about us.
Well, yeah.
What?
The main basis of our interchange has always been the remarkable, sweeping destiny of Richard Wagner, the god of my life.
That better not be an exact quote.
It's 2 exact quotes.
Mother.
This is not how Ludwig dreamed his marriage would go. I think he had seriously believed that as long as he and his wife loved Richard Wagner hard enough, that would be the love that held their relationship together. Once he saw the writing on the wall, he began postponing the wedding over and over until the bride's father told him, "Either man up and pick a date or call it off." "Why, that's a great idea. I'll call it off." He called it off. His fiancée was heartbroken, and he spent the rest of his life alone. Ludwig once began a friendship with a talented and attractive young actor performing a character named Didier. Ludwig went to see his show again and again, demanding the show put on more performances, showering Didier in expensive gifts, and finally inviting him to his home. Except it wasn't Didier who came to his home, it was the actor who played him, a man named Kynes. But the king didn't want Kynes, he wanted Didier, and so Didier had to stay in character for the entire weekend. But then, Ludwig tells Didier about a new production he's going to be cast in, and how the two of them will go to Switzerland together to help Didier prepare for the role of a lifetime. So he takes this guy on the train to Switzerland, and he keeps him up until 4 a.m, forcing him to recite passages from authors and playwrights. Then, once in Switzerland, Ludwig says that to really get in character, the sleep-deprived Didier has to spend 2 days climbing over a mountain. Didier spends 12 straight hours climbing this mountain before he finally decides this is not worth it and climbs all the way back down. Ludwig then takes him back up into the mountains at 2 a.m. and demands he perform his monologue. The actor passed out, the king left in a huff, and they never saw each other again. Because no one else could live up to the ineffable je ne sais quoi of Richard Wagner, Ludwig fell deeper and deeper into isolation. He became completely nocturnal. The only time people saw him was when he went out in his sleigh in the middle of the night, like a ghost coming down from his castle. He spoke to no one, except to members of an imaginary royal court. When his actual servants tried to speak with him, the moody king was as likely to shower them with money as he was to kick them in the head. His one solace, the one final way he found to make his fantasies come to life, was building castles. There were many fights with his contractors about whether or not it was really a good idea to put a waterfall on a staircase, but this was his way of finally creating the ultimate masterpiece. A castle that would be, quote, sacred and out of reach, a worthy temple to the divine friend. He didn't actually have enough money for this castle, but he kept building anyway. His ministers begged him to come back to the capital and run the freaking government. He built another castle. He went into enormous amounts of debt, and his ministers were doing everything they could to continue financing these fairy tale castles, but at a certain point it was simply impossible. Your Majesty, stop. The royal family has no money left. Stop. You cannot keep building castles. Stop. Okay, thinking off the top of my head here, what if France gives us the money for castles, and then the next time Germany goes to war with them, we betray the rest of the German Empire? Oh my God, no! Okay, hear me out. We take a group of loyal and capable servants, we send them to Frankfurt, and we bank rob the Rothschilds. Ludwig's last harebrained scheme involved dissolving parliament to elect a new government that would allow him to tap into the national budget to continue building more castles. His ministers decided Ludwig was too far gone into his fantasies. They got together and declared him insane. He was dragged out of his favorite castle, all his power was given to his uncle, and he was locked away in his summer manor. He was found dead in the lake not too long after. He never saw his castle finished.